Okay, so good morning,
Who's
everyone.
in the room? Who's in the
Just,
room? Does somebody
Just
just
in the room?
Lexi.
Lexi, just
Oh, wow.
Lexi.
Okay.
Alrighty, so good morning, everyone. This is the Contract Review Committee. It is Friday, November 7th, 2025 at 9:02 a.m. And this is Veronica Bolchik, the chair. And the first thing I'd like to do is establish quorum. But before I do that, um, this meeting is being conducted in a hybrid fashion, so all votes will be done by roll call. So let's establish our quorum first. So we have um, only Lexi, our administrator in the trailer, and from the town, we've got Jericho Maley also up on Zoom, and from our committee, up on the screen, I see Suzanne Keating,
Aye, here.
John Balash,
Aye.
Linda Williams,
Aye.
Lee Tesser,
Here.
and myself, Veronica Bolchik. So we do have a quorum. Next thing is to accept our agenda. So can I have a motion to accept the agenda?
Second.
Make-
Question,
Okay, I didn't get that. So let's do, we had John, Linda made the motion and John, second. So by vote, we have Suzanne,
Aye,
John,
aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Linda,
Aye.
myself. So we have an agenda. I don't believe we have any public here today. So, we have no public comment. No one's here. And we do have minutes that need approval, and they were from 9:25:25. Can I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So move, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay. By roll call, Suzanne,
aye,
John,
Aye.
Linda,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
and myself. Thank you again, Lexi, for preparing those. We appreciate it. So next on our agenda, last week we had some discussion about Fairwinds and the opioid grant reporting from Q1 and their agreement. Since we had put this on the agenda, we know that Roberto is out of town and unable to attend today. And with spending a little bit of time with this over the last few days, um, and Jericho, you're going to have to help me a little bit on this because I was doing this by text message while we were
jet lag.
flying. So I'm also functioning with very little sleep. I woke up on what was it, Wednesday morning in on the East Coast and arrived here in Australia this morning very early. So I think I've had a few hours sleep. So we were texting while in the plane, and it became pretty obvious to me that what we're seeing is, and we'll get to this when we discuss Fairwind's grant application, that there's at least three different representations of what Fairwinds believes the opioid grant that they were awarded is. And what was going to happen, we would have someone representing Fairwinds come and talk with us. But what needs to happen is a letter is being prepared, and Jericho will be doing that, that basically outlines that between what the grant that was awarded, that we awarded to them, our understanding. And then what they gave us in an explanation when we questioned the Q1 report. And then in their grant application that is in front of us, they actually elaborated. And when we asked what did they get funding from other sources, and they mentioned the Oprah grant, and the explanation in front of us in this grant is completely different. So there's three different, and it just is highlighting a bigger issue. And we want them to see what we have seen and have the opportunity to prepare to come in and speak with us. But we would like to have Roberto attend as the executive director, because I think we want to give them the benefit of the doubt to try to explain to us, but also we want to get the message across that when we award a grant, it should be, and it's not, it's a restricted grant. And it's not to just be put into a general fund, and or they can't change it midstream without proper notification, if it would even be possible to do that. So what I would like at this point, with the quarterly that they presented to us, it basically is about 25% of the money that was awarded. And I don't have that exact figure in front of me, but it's over $9,000. I don't want to not pay that, but we want to make it clear that we will not pay any more going forward unless we have a better explanation, and also that they understand that, you know, yeah.
I got a
John?
problem with this whole thing, and I'll go after John.
No,
Okay, John?
it's not transportable from one to the other.
Right.
That it's just, and that we've had that problem with them before.
Exactly. But what they did present to us in the quarterly is for peer recovery coaching, but it was only for a quarter of the money that was allocated. And the grant, when we awarded it, was that it was meant specifically for Q1. That was their whole presentation and what we approved. So I think we should approve the Q1 at that $9,000, but where we go from here, that, needs further explanation, or how Jericho, I see your hand up, but I don't know if
Linda.
you want to, would
Yeah.
help before Linda?
Possibly.
No, I'm not
Okay.
sure, because I have more experience with this maybe than, except for Jericho. Because at
Okay.
CPC, I have to sign all the contracts for CPC. We have grant requests. And they can only be, having dealt with this for 24 years now, only be used for what is in the application. If we get into trouble, normally we do once a month, we have to report to the DOR what we've expended. And if you expend it on something, no matter how inadvertent, that is not within the scope of the exact grant request, that is a big, big problem. That's not just a little problem, we'll fix it next month when they ask for more money. That is a major, major problem. They cannot go outside the bounds of what was in their grant agreement, period. And I'm concerned, because this has happened before, it should not have happened at all. We have a problem. I'm fully in support of Fair Winds and their programs that they applied for. But if they're actually commingling these funds with something else over at Fair Winds, we are all in trouble, because we're allowing them to be paid. So,
So
I don't know if Jericho wants to get that granular with him, but somebody needs to have a conversation here.
Right.
So Linda's largely correct. On the contract review committee funds, the non-opioid funds, we have more leeway because we collect and determine the way in which they're implemented. So as long as they comport with Mass 30B, the procurement law for transparency of process and equal access to grant funds, we can do more or less what we want. Because this is opioid money, it is much more tightly controlled in what it can be used for. The description of the service they're providing does still fall within the abatement fund usage amounts. So it's not, they have not violated the agreement that we signed with the Massachusetts government to accept this money by using it in this manner. But it is very important that we are very careful with how this money gets spent and that we're kind of aware of changes as they go on. Part of the point of us developing that operational fund, operational grant system is so that agencies could be more flexible in the money use. This is not that. This needs to be used very tightly. We need to be informed of changes in its methods of usage. And we also need to kind of have a better understanding of what the plans are going forward. Their agreement is good for a full year. The usages, as long as it is connected back towards their grant agreement, and we can have some discussion with them on that, then they are not, it's not a huge problem yet. But I want to be on top of this so that this is, this is different from the other funding sources that we have. We have to be more strict about it. I did have some discussions or I was emailing back and forth with Christy, so I have a couple of bits and pieces. And Linda, I was just going to mention them because it's clarifying information on what they plan on doing going forward, but they're separate from your discussion on like the funding sources and commingling of funds.
Right.
But the shortfall that they were that caused the change in usage that this quarterly was for, that was due to a shortfall in the Dragonfly fundraising, which I guess was what they were intending to use to do the sliding fee scale for PRC later on in the year. And they anticipate using between 8 to 9K per quarter for the remainder of the quarter. So it does look like you were largely correct, Veronica. They were going to move from a all Q1 reimbursement for one more intense section to a full year reimbursement cycle. On an admin side, I don't have a huge problem with that. I just would have appreciated knowing about it beforehand and having a chance to discuss with the committee if that was within what they like to do or what you would like to do, because that decision ultimately resides with you as long as I am satisfied that we're not breaking any laws or violating any best practices. It's the committee's decision, specifically on the quarterlies and invoicing, to be the voice for the people who are ostensibly going to be receiving these services. So there's nothing illegal with this request. There's nothing particularly like unusual about the request to switch how the funding is used. It just needed to be discussed and kind of brought before us a little bit more, so we're at least aware of it, and we can discuss its implications on other grant decisions that we're making.
Right. And I do believe that if they had approached us during Q1 and said, we need to extend this money for the entire year, we probably would have granted that. Maybe we wouldn't, but to see it after the fact and without even an explanation at that point, and if it wasn't for us reviewing the quarterlies, which is part of our responsibility, we would not have noticed this. So I think it's, we need to, I don't want to say make this as an example, but, it needs to be made very clear. So I think that paying them for Q1 does fall within the scope of what we gave them the money for. It's just that they were to spend all of it in Q1, and that was their request, not our restrictions on that. This was what their grant request was, to have it all for Q1. And something changed somewhere along the way, and we just should have been informed. Linda, does that make sense to you?
It does make sense. I just wanted to add one thing.
Mm-hmm. Go
Even
ahead.
at the CPC level, under the contracts and the reporting to DOR, we can't take money that was allocated for a specific contract or for a specific request. And they're not allowed to come back to CPC to then take the money that they didn't use and apply it to something else that was not in the contract. So
Right.
shifting money, if they have money left or they wanted to use it in a different way, is not allowed once there's a contract signed.
Right. Right.
And this wouldn't be a change in you, or this still is relative. This is still the same use. It's just a different usage rate. I'll have to dig through the agreement, but when we put this one together, I don't believe we said the term of the agreement is still for the full fiscal year. But I will have to dig with that. And then once we get a sense of what their changes and our interest or willingness to follow along with the modified plan, I would then go to Brian to make sure that we're not violating any of the specifics of the agreement.
Exactly. And that's, I think, the wise thing to do, the prudent thing to do, is to get a direction or from Brian Turbin.
From Brian. Yep.
Yes.
And I
Okay.
would very much like to have their plan, or the outline of the plan that they have for reimbursement and usage. Then we would decide if that's something we're comfortable with, and then we would go to Brian to make sure that it is legal and to require any or get any required modifications to any of the contracts. But yeah, this is Fed money, or this is ultimately Fed money, and it is ultimately for a specific use case. We
Right.
have to be extra careful with how it's used, and we have to be very we need to be properly informed of how it's going along, kind of thing.
Exactly. Exactly. Without any, unless there's any other comments, can I have a motion to then approve Fairwind's Q1 report? And Lexi, I don't know if you have the exact dollar amount on that. I don't have that in front of me. I don't know if we would have to have that in the motion.
I think you could say as represented in the invoice.
Yes.
Sorry, Lexi, did I go over you?
No,
Oh,
Oh,
Lexi
sorry, okay.
was
The
gonna say
number,
something.
if you, it's $9,390.90.
okay. 9,000, say it one more time.
$9,390.90.
Okay, thank you. So, so let's start this over again. So a motion to approve Fairwind's Q1 report for the opioid grant in the amount of $9,390.90.
I'll make a
and-
motion to approve that first quarter payment for Fair Winds in the amount of $9,390.90.
Okay, a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Lee. By roll call, Suzanne,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Linda,
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. So we can get that payment out to them. And we will wait, Jericho, if you can prepare the communication. And I'm not gonna put it on next week's agenda because we do have interviews next week, but we do want to have this follow up on this conversation and where we would go here forth. So either maybe on the 21st or at a future meeting before too long, we need to have this wrapped up. All right,
And I think it would be fair to have, when I communicate to Fairwinds, I'm going to be asking for a plan on the modified reimbursement and a discussion of the difference between grant request and grant usage before Q2 at the absolute latest.
okay. And I think that it's always a learning experience. We try to take something away. I think that when we either do our next round of grants, when we have an applicant's information session, that we spend some time in really covering this point. I'm not saying that others have done something like this, but I think that it's important that, it becomes, let's make it a educational opportunity here. All right. So, if we can move on with our next, which is, we had some program grants that we didn't get to last week. So, and then after that, we have our capacity or operational grants that we have to review. So on the list that I have, we have the CSBH New Hope, Hope on AC grant application, and then the other one was NCTV's, the AC ambassadors. So if we can first discuss the New Hope or Hope on AC, it's on page 12 in the grant applications here. They're asking for $49,200. And they also had a grant application in the substance misuse. And I do know that when we're reviewing that, one of the comments we had, it was lacking in background and exactly what the program is. Well, this application gave us, and at least in my opinion, gave us lots of information. And I do know that these applications they stand solo, so it doesn't, it doesn't negate the fact that the opioid grant was, excuse me, the substance misuse grant was lacking information. The information I found it being here. Does anyone have some comments on this, that we can get some discussion going on this grant? It's a relatively new concept. Let's see.
So, if I may, I did, since the last meeting, do a little bit of a dive into the some of the associated papers and some of the associated testimonials and background. The core technology here is the use of basically magnetism to stimulate sectors of the brain, and to couple that with both group and talk therapy, more traditional talk therapy, in a manner that is similar to recent uses of some of the different psychotherapy or psychoactive therapy, basically. And it has been pretty well demonstrated with a fair degree of efficacy. The scientific basis for the efficacy of this is roughly similar to a lot of the wellness work that we've seen, which is that there are real and potentially profound changes in behavior, but they are very protocol and individually sensitive, so that it really is a question of execution for these things. That said, that these particular types of therapy have been proven to be pretty effective in areas where others have failed. So it's sort of a multi-pronged approach. And sometimes this will work on individuals that are resistant to more traditional types of therapy, or people who are not responding as well or not maintaining a wellness practice. So it is an interesting and really innovative technology, really. The other little bit of background is that CSBH is just the fiscal agent. This services will be provided for, so we provided underneath CSBH by this New Hope or Hope on Act, rather, I believe is the organization name. And that is a for-profit company, but their budgetary information suggests that this is being delivered at pretty close to cost through this program.
Right. And the program that they're proposing is just going to be for middle school youths, age grades 5 to 8, where initially I thought that this would be a broader age range, or I thought it was more for adults. So it's a pretty narrow age group that they're going to conduct this with. You know, it's very detailed. And I think, you know, the comment that I had after reading the application, it's almost like, I don't want to say that this is a research project, but that's the feeling that I got with that. You know, the person who wrote this is very thorough and gave us lots of information cited. And thank you, Jericho, for going into reading a little bit more of the background. I took a peek at some of that, but looking at what they want to do, there's more information here than we get with most applications. It's extremely thorough. It's you know, we do want innovative and new programs, and you know, as we know, it's this is more of a prevention program as opposed to a treatment program. It's an interesting concept, but you know, I then also look, it's 20 students that they are making assumption, and it's a small, you know, segment of our overall population. But any other comments from other committee members?
Do we know why they're targeting just that age group? It does seem, if it's effective, it would appear to me to maybe apply a little bit on a broader scale.
Right. I'm going to make an assumption on that. The individual, one of the principals in this happens to work with that population in the school system.
Mm.
So I think that it's, you know, she may have contacts there, and that's what her area of expertise is. Jericho?
She also has a section in the area about why she discussed or why she's selecting this particular area on, I believe it's 34. There's a particularly,
It's page 29.
yeah, sorry, 29.
Okay.
The versioning on this got weird. The specific rationale she has for that is that it is basically, it's a critical developmental point. So small interventions here will have longer term impacts, as well as provide kids with toolkit, like with a behavioral health or wellness practice that they can utilize later in life. Basically, this is the small nudge that ends up, you know, moving the whole mountain 20 years later kind of approach. And then also that there was a demonstrated need in a couple of the hospital CHIP, and then on one of the other assessment plans. And because she's working with CSBH, she's probably quite aware of the gap study that was done, which is
Right.
sort of where we found out that we're very short on traditional providers, especially in this demographic.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
I know the substance misuse request has a broader base, is basically anyone with substance misuse. And then, you know, I assume that once this gets rolling, there would be other populations that could be introduced as time goes on. Like I know that a lot of this work has been used in trauma response and in like longer term behavioral health, kind of not necessarily addiction, but adverse repetitive behavior management.
Okay. Well, we definitely would want her to come in and present to us on both of the applications. Yes? Joe,
I actually just got an email from her yesterday, asking if she could make a video for the presentation and potentially give it to us during her interview to kind of run through the actual process itself.
As long as it can be within a
10
certain
minutes.
time period, because on our interview day, I think next week we are going to be meeting for 3 hours to cover the interviews, and we want to give her an opportunity, but at the same time, she can't have an hour of our time, so,
I will communicate that whatever form her presentation can take place in, it must stay within around 10 minutes with a little extra time for including a little bit of time for questions.
okay. Alrighty. Any other comments on this? I think that, just my one comment is, I know that our ask is almost double what the money that we have, and I think that we're gonna have, some hard decisions when we come to deliberations, but, we want new and innovative and different programming, and this definitely does fall within that. So we'll have to have more information when she comes in, and then we will wait for deliberations on this. Okay, with
Hand up from
Linda, I
Linda.
see your hand up. Is that up?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that targeting the middle school is the best option. I have to support that because where the kids start, it really starts as low as fifth, having had 8 kids in this school. It starts between 5th and 6th grade, but when they get to that middle school, which is a wasteland, if they can survive the worst 3 years of their lives, 6th, 7th, and 8th, in middle school, that'll set them up better when they head into 9th grade. So anything that targets the chaos that's usually in the middle school,
Right.
the better off.
And that is not just in Nantucket Middle School, it's the age range.
Yeah, it's hellscape.
Yes, it definitely is. So, thank you for that comment. All right. Okay, going on to the next, would be the NCTV ACT ambassadors for $78,000. Do we have any comment on this?
Do you know what page that's on in the list?
Yes, I do. Just give me a second. It is.
Page 45.
NCTV?
No, it would be it has to be after 124. It's probably about 120, 127 or 8.
Okay, let's see. No, that's still okay. Family, Martha's Vineyard, family.
Let's see. I have
Before NAMIs.
it on 151 in my version, but I crammed a bunch of other stuff into the margins and notes on this.
I think I'm looking at an older packet, but for me, it's page 45, NCTV AC and Ambassadors Program. But
Oh,
I'm sure
AC
it's the same thing.
ambassadors. Oh,
Can
right.
you look, Lee, can you look down at the footer of the page and tell me what the revision date is?
This one says proposals FY 27, 10/17/25.
So weird. I have the same one.
And you have it on 45, Lee?
Yeah, right above that, it says page 45. Yeah.
There.
I had a problem finding NAMIs in here. So it's a little bit funky, so.
I don't know what
Okay,
happened with
here it
this.
is. I
But
have it at
I will-
145, 145. Is that what you said, Lee?
No, just 45.
Yeah, mine is on 145.
That's interesting.
I am gonna
It didn't
next
say-
year there's gonna be a revision in how I put the packets together because there's been a couple of weird issues this year.
Okay. Yes. And you know, what makes it stand out is they
Yes, I have it on
um,
145. I just found it.
So
Okay,
Thank you.
alrighty. Alrighty. So if everyone has that in front of them, and I have some comments on this grant.
Hmm.
You know,
Historically, I believe we funded ACK ambassadors as part of the Youth Behavioral Health Grant a few years ago.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
yes.
Was that three? Well, however many years ago it was. Either 3 or 300, I cannot tell. Um,
It feels like 300.
Some it does. Some of the so it's an ongoing program. I've spoken to some teachers who have positive feelings towards it. It's part of a kind of broader, more community-focused approach to health and wellness among the youth. It gives kind of useful and marketable skills, and it has been kind of ongoing for quite a while. I have not seen as much of the PSA output of this as I was hoping to, and we haven't got a full follow-up on the last round, although we were still working on our outcome tracking rules and our request for data collection. So that's not exactly a black mark or anything. I would like to hear kind of a little more granularly what the expected outcomes are and what previous outputs from ACK ambassadors have been.
Right.
Yeah,
Um,
I was just gonna say, I agree with that, Jericho. The one thing that I wanted to ask on this one was simply what kind of data they have in terms of, use of their programming, number of clicks. They can monitor that sort of thing, right? Yeah.
I
I'm
assume
sure they
so.
have analytics on for that. Yeah.
Yes, yes. You know, and they talk about results-based accountability, RBA, which, is, known, and so they are capturing data. But we would like to hear more, and it actually would be going back to the experience they had with the youth behavioral, because they did this same program, except I think they have actually added more supports in with this application than they had with the youth behavioral health. It was a relatively new program that they were going to do. So I think this was written building on the success that they had with that first run through. And here once again, it's, what we're seeing with this, and, maybe even with the previous, these are programs specifically for our youth. And, I don't think that the need in servicing our young people has changed, even though we recognized it a few years ago, and we were very fortunate that the town gave us extra funding to put into that area. So now they're coming back, and unfortunately, we don't have that money, but it's folded into our human services grants. So I think what, this is leading toward is that we do need to get more money next year's
Bless
coming. And, our needs assessment that is currently being conducted will hopefully give us some data that will support that. But, here it's a extremely well-written application. And this is definitely collaboration, which we have said that we want our applicants to work with others. They're working with everyone from the schools to Addiction Solutions to ASAP, Fairwinds, MAST. So they're doing, at least in the application, they're doing it all. So it's, I did see, when the last round, we did see a few of those clips, but that's a question that I have is, once these are done, where are they being used, and can they be used more broadly? And, I hope that it's more than just what the person gets out of it. It's the story that they tell for others to maybe say, oh, that's me too.
I
Suzanne?
believe that you can see these on NCTV's YouTube. All the things that they
Right,
do, you can see them there, and they're available for the public and anybody. And I think
right.
they're using them definitely. Well, I know they're using them in the schools, but
Yeah,
My
Cool.
sense in reading this is that NCTV has like an on-demand feature that, if somebody at their own leisure wanted to click on it, they can, right?
yes.
right,
Yeah.
right. But, that's wonderful for people seeking it out, but, with the effort that is gone into this, I would like it being pushed as opposed to, people seeking it. So, maybe they can give a little bit more, information on that. And, because of the dollar amount and whatever, I think I would want them to come in and give us a broader view on what this is. And, here, they've applied here, and they've also applied similarly in the substance misuse area. So we have 2 applications from them. So, they should come in to represent both of them. Right, and actually in, the substance misuse, they're asking for $100,000. This is only 70, only 78 or whatever it is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
78.
78,000. So with the 2 of this, asking $178,000, we know that just, without any deliberation, we won't be able to fund all of this because we just don't have that much money, but we do want them to come in.
Well, I think that just explained the confusion on the grant request, because I'm looking at the substance misuse grant for $100,000.
Oh,
I think, would that make sense, Jericho?
in the programming, was it highlighted a different color?
That I
Um,
don't know, but anyway.
Uh,
we have it, they have 2 separate grant applications.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, I think, you know, they're asking a lot of money, and,
Yeah.
we need to have them come in and do a presentation for us. And then, when we get to deliberations, we'll take everything into consideration.
Apologies, I was briefly away. What I did hear, was there a question for me?
Well, what I just said, that they also have an application in the substance misuse area. So, there they asked for 100,000, this they're asking for 78,000. So it is, with the combination of the 2, even though they're 2 separate funding areas, we do want them to come in and explain. This, for the 78, is primarily, this is a youth-based program. And I'd have to go back into a couple of weeks ago when we talked about the $100,000 for NCT, the ACT ambassadors. I think they may be looking more broadly in that for an adult reach. So, but it's still, the combination of the 2 is $178,000.
actually, it says here in their funding sources, Town of Nantucket Substance Misuse Grant, 100,000, production of teen intended video toolkit series, and it doesn't mention adults. Clinician and
That's teen also.
interviews, yeah, student engagement filming, etc.
Okay, so it is, they will come in and they'll, give an
Clarify.
explanation, and we need to look at them as 2 separate grants. But it's a similar, the grant applications are similar for the 2. Okay.
And while we do need to look at the two grant requests independently in terms of their merit, we are certainly within our rights to look at how much we are funding in organizations across our different grant programs.
Exactly. And everyone in an email this week from Lexi got a spreadsheet of the last few years of grant request, grant awards, and for the past 3 years. And Lee and Suzanne, we tried we keep
That was
that.
very helpful.
Exactly. It's a
Yeah.
tool, and not that we necessarily are going to say, well, we gave them so much money in the past, we're not going to do that now. It's good to have that history. So thank you, Lexi, for putting that together. And as we do each cycle, and just fill it in so we can keep that history moving forward. So all right. Any other comments on NCTV and their ACK ambassadors? All right. With no hands. Next we will go, I put these in order. So now we're going to talk about the operational grants. And the first one on the list that I have would be Fairwinds. And Fairwinds is on page 54 in the packet. Or at least in my packet, it's on page 54.
I genuinely do not know what happened with that. It should not be possible for everyone to have a different page number.
Well, mine's on
AI,
54.
it's called AI.
Right.
Something must have happened there.
The gremlins went in and made some
I'm
choices.
blaming the gremlins.
Yeah, yeah. So their grant application here, and if anyone just continuing with the conversation we had earlier on page 56 of my grant application here, where it has total fiscal year 26 grants. They received $286,250. On number 5 it says Town of Nantucket opioid settlement grant 35,000. Grant purposes, this program will cover operational costs, including personnel onboarding training to meet the growing needs of the opioid treatment on Nantucket. When I read that was like a red flag. That's not,
Yeah.
that's what it was awarded. And, so either there's a misconnect with whoever wrote this grant, but that led to the conversation we had earlier. So that just jumped out at me. And it's only a small part of it. It's just the background information. In fact, we didn't necessarily ask for that granular detail. So it's sort of like, and I'm looking at Lee, you as an attorney, like we give them the question, only answer the question. So here
It's
they've incriminated themselves
biggest-
by too
biggest
much
mistake.
information.
Yeah, biggest mistake, right? Yeah.
Biggest mistake.
Yeah.
But, honestly, that is a reason why I think we need to have this discussion further with them. But getting back to just the grant application that they're put before us, they've applied for a operational grant, and it's technology infrastructure migration. This project seeks funding for reliable IT systems to ensure secure client data and strengthen clinical capacity. And, it's, I thought that the grant was well written. It talks about why they need this, etc. But, the question I have, the grant is a maximum of $100,000, and even in the grant request, they have fair and respectively request 149,724 to support the agency's technology infrastructure. So they're saying that it's going to cost them 149,000 in change, we're only gonna, if we award, it would be for 100,000, so where are they gonna get the rest of this money? Because they're asking, and consistently it goes through and it's asking for more, and I guess this is also year 2 to 3 of the migration budget, and so I think that, there's whoever put this together, there's a disconnect also. So I would question, if it's gonna cost more, where's the rest of the money gonna come from? And can they do it if they only get $100,000 on this?
I think the reason they did that was just to show us what the total cost of the project was gonna be, knowing that they're not gonna get more than 100 grand. Because
Right,
it looks stupid to put in, I just want 100 grand. Well, what's the whole project?
right.
They
Well,
can't say the project's only gonna cost $100,000 if it actually costs more, and they know they're not getting more than 100.
right,
That would be what I would put in myself.
right,
I
right,
can't say that you can't say this thing only costs 100 grand when it doesn't.
right. It's, the price tag is much more.
Yeah.
And we usually ask that question, and I'm looking to see where that would be in here.
Do we
The
have a question in the packet when we send the stuff out? Can you operate this if you don't get full funding from us?
Yes, we have that question.
We
And
do,
did
and I'm
they
seeing,
answer that question?
that's what I'm looking for, because it is how will your organization sustain operation should the funding expire?
Well, I would
So
say if you don't get full funding would be the better question.
right. Well, I think that's how we
That's how it's
worded it.
worded.
That's how it's right. That's how they reworded on here, but. And I'm just glancing at this again. It's on page 66.
Yeah,
Yeah,
while this funding supports a significant portion of the technology migration, Fairwinds has a multi-pronged sustainability strategy in place. The organization draws support from a combination of grants, private donations, and fee-for-service revenue, including commercial insurance, Medicaid, Medicare, and sliding fee scale payments. This diversified funding base ensures that essential services continue even if a single source of support changes. The technology infrastructure funded by this grant also increases staff efficiency, reduces downtime, and streamlines the administrative processes, allowing Fairwinds to maximize existing resources and maintain service delivery. ACS managed services, cybersecurity protocols, requiring only predictable budgeted annual maintenance to remain effective. So that's more to the long-term sustainability. But it looks like they have they have the capacity to redirect some other funding sources to make up a shortfall or to continue the sustainability of this process.
okay,
But I think that would be a worthwhile question to ask when
Question.
they come in.
yes. And, here, I'm sure that they may have other sources, but, here once again, hopefully it's not taking money that has been restricted in an area to cover this, so, but they did have an explanation of that. And here, this is, I guess when I look at this, when we talk about a capacity or an operational grant, this does fall within that area because, by the nature of what they're asking, it is to basically make their whole operation function better financially, for the clinicians, et cetera. So this is definitely an operational grant.
Mhm.
So, and we do want them to come in to talk about this grant. First of all, we said all of the operational grants should come in, but also because of the dollar amount, they should come in and give us an overview. Any other comments on this? Okay, with no hands up, then let's go to the next capacity or operational grant, which is the Interfaith Council to operate a program to provide food utility rental assistance to island residents in need. And that is on page 99 in my packet. And does anyone want to start with comments on this before I So here they're asking for $100,000 in this grant, which is the maximum. And this is an organization that is near and dear to my heart. I spend a fair amount of time when I'm on the island as a volunteer in this program. And I think when we talked about having an operational grant, this application is exactly what we're thinking of and how it's intended, because reading over it, I think this is a better application than I think we've ever seen from them. It's a very well done application for them compared to in the past. And there's a few different things that are happening here. And the one thing that, I think everyone is aware, it's had enough press, the need for a new home, and just in this past week, or I guess it was on October 29th, a building has been purchased, and the food pantry and NIFRA, so it's not just the food pantry, but NIFRA, which is Nantucket Food, Fuel, and Rental Assistance, are moving into a building on Boynton. Is it Boynton Lane?
Yeah,
Boynton Lane.
Boynton
The
Lane.
old, what was that?
Well,
The-
Peter
it was
Piper.
Peter
Piper,
Piper.
Peter Piper, the Piper.
Yeah,
Right.
and Kim sold the building. She's not well, but there's also an apartment on the second floor. They've got
Right.
parking. It's on the shuttle thing. It's across from the Muse. I mean,
Right.
it's not downtown where people had trouble getting to it. It's in a much more accessible area.
Right, they have
And the
parking.
building is huge inside. It's perfect.
Peter Piper Market, that's what it was.
That's what
Yes.
it was.
Yeah.
Right,
Huge.
and the
That
building,
location.
building was purchased by the land bank,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and it will house Nourish Nantucket, and it'll have NIFRA, and then it also has the deer processing new organization will be functioning in the basement, and the way
Getting that allows people to have venison.
Exactly. And by Massachusetts state law, I'll say customer for the venison meat that will be processed there is the food insecurity and the food pantry. And every year, the food pantry does get a few 100 pounds of processed meat from off island that comes to the food pantry for distribution. So, and because the building was purchased by the land bank, one of their missions is, it's conservation, recreation, and agriculture. And it was a very, this is collaboration on the island. It's a wonderful thing. And the way that it is structured is the food pantry, or NIFRA, will be paying rent to and I believe it'll be managed under Nourish Nantucket the way that it's structured. And the grant application, this was written before the building was purchased, but it was written with it in mind. And, you know, right now, the food pantry being in the Greenhound building downtown, it was provided by the town that owns the building. And it was done, I think, I don't know if it was for free or $1 a year. So, you know, that's an expense now that they will have a permanent home, but there is going to be an expense that comes with that. And I think she talks about approximately $65,000 that'll be paid for rent. But the positive there is they do have office space on Mattocket Road where that office space should be incorporated here. As Linda, you said, the building is huge and there will be, there needs to be some renovations in the building. But it will house them, so they won't be paying rent on Mattocket Road, but this does come with more than what Mattocket Road was, so that sort of gets folded in. Jericho, I see your hand up.
So this move could literally not have been better for both the food pantry, the venison donation program, and Nourish Nantucket. It gives them a commercial kitchen, which allows them to do a variety of additional food reclamation projects. It allows them to do prepared meals. It allows them to supplement existing Meals on Wheels and other delivery food options. It lets them entertain for fundraisers. And then it is together with the land bank, which is probably the most stable landlord you could have. And then it also co-locates them with Nourishing Nantucket, which means that there's more food services available in one spot, which is a key need. There is going to be some work that needs to be done to primarily to allow additional access for palletized cargo to go in and out. And then some access issues so that they can separate out the commercial kitchen from the operation area. So probably like a wall or some securing stuff. And then there's some minor stuff downstairs that needs to be done. But this gives them like several, like maybe 100 square feet of refrigerated space, including freezer space. They will have direct access to the venison donation program without any intermediary steps. They'll be able to do prepared meals. They'll be able to have many more people in there, and then they'll be able to do intake for all of the additional services right alongside it in the food delivery. So it will incur some additional costs in the proposal. What the operational grant will allow the food pantry, or what will allow NIFRA to do, is to move some money around more flexibly that lets them offset the moving expenses by taking some of the staff time that we traditionally do not fund and putting it under this operational grant. It's really exactly why and exactly the right time that we put these operational grants in, because this is going to be difficult to anticipate all of the various costs that come up over the course of this move. So having them some additional flexibility in how they present or how they reimburse from us will be very beneficial to them, I believe. They've tightened up their processes a lot. They're modernizing. This will allow them to overcome a lot of the operational inefficiencies that old location had. It'll vastly reduce the amount of time it takes for them to move things around. They'll be able to store more food at once, which means less frequent trips off island. All of these things will add up to significantly more efficiency in the process. And I think it is a nice show of potential solidarity between the town, the land bank, the various nonprofits. It's really I very much like this particular grant, and I think it is a good time for this particular request.
Right. And one of the areas that they're outlined here is additional staff. So right now the pantry operates Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 3 to 6. And asking for an assistant to the food pantry manager, approximately 40 hours biweekly, will allow potentially to have an increase in operational hours too. And, there's no doubt that they see, and, like I said, this application is the best that we've ever seen from them, and we know that, you know, typically anywhere between 300 and 350 clients come to the pantry every week. And when you look at the numbers of bags of food and households on the island that are served, it's astounding. And this also puts with Nourish Nantucket, and this being in the same building, it really is answering a lot of the need that is on the island. And each of the programs has a different angle of the food insecurity issue. And Food Pantry, sees probably the most clients of any organization, I think, on the island. Jericho?
It's also an unfortunate certainty at this point that there will be greater demand for all of NIFRA's sources from the
Oh, without
utilities on down. So I think we need to be aware of that when we're making our decision around that. All of this is going to be in greater demand this time next year. So whatever we can do to be of assistance on that, we should consider that when we're looking at this. That said, given the amount of the award, I would recommend that we ask them in to just discuss and give us updates on the progress and on anything that has come up since this application was submitted.
Exactly. And I think just because we do want to talk to all of the operational grant people, so they would come in for that. But definitely they were one of the organizations that we had in mind when we discussed operational grant, because they get so many different funding sources. Grants and foundations, I think, is 72% of what they get. Donations is 22, fundraising is 1.6, and then the town contract, I guess, it's on page 111, is just under 4% of the money that they receive. And they receive money from multiple places. And the Boston Food Bank provides the majority of the food that
They
is
do get some
distributed.
from the Cape as well. They were
Yes.
getting stuff from the Cape.
Yeah, well, that is through it's
Boston.
combination there. But definitely well done application here. And it's when one of the questions I had, and when we opened up this grant, they've been looking and it's been worked on for a long time. And my thought was, if they didn't have the closing of that building on October 29th, to come with us for a grant with uncertainty of even if the program would have a place to go after April, I think it would have been a hard thing for us to fund. And one of the, many options were discussed in a portable type program too. So it's wonderful that the moon and the stars lined up, and this has happened. So kudos to all involved. It takes a village, as they say, and this is a good example of that.
If we could give them more, I'd give them more.
Yeah. Okay, on to any other comments on this, John?
Well, this is only really perhaps irrelevant, but what we have, while it isn't part of our mandate, the side benefit of being able to have a practical way of attacking the deer population is a plus that is not part of our consideration, but it is a plus and a source of food for the supply for them. It's a kind of a double win. But my thought is that it is conceivable that they may be able to find additional funding from a source they never had before, from people who are interested in this whole issue of conservation of our land by diminishing the deer population.
Yeah.
And just because I've been face deep in tick and the tick-borne illness and its connection with deer, everyone go kill a deer, please. Just go out there and do it.
You can go
Um,
sit in my yard and just bow and arrow them out of my backyard. I have an
Yeah.
entire herd that lives in my yard every
Yeah.
freaking day.
Yeah, no,
Unbelievable.
there's 5 or 6 of them that are just living in the backyard of my house right now, and I see them every time I come home. We nod at each other at this point. They're not even
They don't
running.
care. They don't move. They stand next to my car and they don't move.
Oh, I
I get
know.
out of my car, I'm 10 feet away from them and they just don't move.
I know.
I've never seen anything like this for the deer pop.
I
It's
actually hit one on Milestone Road. The mother was standing with 2 babies on the side of the road, only I didn't see them because of the traffic in front of me. And they leaped out in front of me, the mother did, and I hit her dead on. And she
Oh.
flew up in the air and ended up on the other side of the road. And I think she was also pregnant. So it's bad as I felt. I was like, well, the only good thing here is I eliminated at least 1, possibly 2. And then I went home and threw up and cried.
Yeah.
yeah,
But
yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a
yeah.
Bambi lover.
Yeah, well, you know,
It's not
They-
good for the current situation and population density is not good for the deer. I was speaking to one of the state wildlife biologists, and between the population density, the founder effect from all being basically there was one dad for probably 95% of all of these deer originally.
Yes, one
Yes.
dad and 2
Yes.
does brought here by an idiot back in the 20s. So they needed companionship. So we brought a stag over for my
Exactly.
little 2 does. How stupid can that be?
And
And, you know,
besides
they-
maybe a tiny amount of migration to Tuckernuck, although almost certainly very unlikely, that is every deer on Nantucket has descended from them. The genetic makeup is not great. There's a lot of asymmetrical deer, and you don't want to see asymmetry in a biological
Right.
organism. It's not healthy for them. And then the deer density likely is in the 100 per square mile area to reduce the risk of tick-borne illnesses, especially now that Lone Stars have likely made their breakout from the Yield Point area where they're largely concentrated. We were just looking at alpha-gal rates in Martha's Vineyard, which is about 15 years ahead of us on the Lone Star explosion, more or less. Alpha-gal is now, I think, higher. There's more people reporting alpha-gal syndrome than there are with Lyme disease. And Lyme disease was the #1 tick-borne, like we have a lot of Lyme disease on Nantucket. Martha's Vineyard had quite a bit more. And I believe in like just the last couple of years that like they're up to 4,000 plus people with alpha-gal.
Oh my.
What is alpha-gal? Is that the 4th
Yeah,
one?
what
I
is
can't
that?
remember the name of.
That's the meat allergy one. Essentially what it is there is a sugar that
Yeah.
that gets into your body and triggers an immune response to essentially animal protein.
Red meat.
Yeah.
Red meat mostly.
okay. So wait a minute, aren't we concerned about the deer that we're going to give away to at the food pantry?
There's absolutely no concern on that because the processing, it's the tick that carries it. It doesn't
Not
infect.
the meat.
Yeah, it's the tick
Right.
that carries it, and the deer just carries the tick or the ticks around, making sure that they're all over the place and making sure that any positivity in one part of the island gets spread across the entire island. They are extremely good. The processing and the Fish and Wildlife Company, or Fish and Wildlife Department, I should say, at the state is extremely careful about the the processing of meat, and they have very strict protocols on utilizing that meat.
Okay.
It's a statewide program designed to facilitate the reduction in deer populations while also providing sustainable food to people in need. They are, and I've talked with their biologists extensively on this. They are way on top of any of that. It's only the ticks that are the concern, but the deer are essentially a cruise ship for anywhere between 8 and 15,000 ticks at a time, and they just carry them around. One of the talks, sorry, I'm digressing slightly, but
Yeah.
one of the talks was just about ticks and tick behavior. So I'm tucking my pants into my socks and spraying myself with permethrin basically religiously for the next 8 months.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And they're
I've had it
also,
twice. I don't want it again, but we've got 4 different varieties of illness here with these ticks,
right,
between babesiosis, ehrlichia, Lyme, and this other 4th one.
And some
anaplasmosis.
and some
Yeah.
Insanity.
anaplasmosis.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's insanity.
Yeah.
I don't
And
go anywhere anymore.
Yeah, unfortunately, the testing in humans is not really very accurate, because when you look at the numbers reported, and Jericho, you know much more about this, the numbers reported are very small, but I think that you're not a true Nantucketer until you've had one of the tick-borne illnesses, and I've had it supposedly twice, and I can't even tell you when it happened. So there
I
also,
will
yeah,
I will very briefly plug a scientific research program that is currently ongoing on Nantucket, looking for long-term Lyme's and then by proxy other tick-borne illnesses. It's Dr. Sam Telford. When he's back on island, I'll make sure I share it around. But he is essentially looking for people who are here who have either been exposed to ticks for long periods of time or have had a tick-borne illness. And then he is doing blood draws to do seroprevalence testing on people to then try and correlate that with the testing he's doing on ticks. He is the tick guy. He's down here pretty regularly, and he's been here for about 30 years. He goes and drags a couple of spots every year, takes all his ticks back, tests them for what they have, and then he's working on helping us figure out how prevalent it is in the bugs. And then the second part, and the part that this research project is on, is what the prevalence is in people. It's an unfortunate truth that the treatment and symptoms presentation for most tick-borne illness is the same, regardless of what it is. You get a fever, you maybe get a spot, you get doxycycline, and then no one is really going to do a diagnostic test to figure out which of the 4 or 5 tick-borne illnesses you have, because it's a molecular test that costs money that isn't going to change the diagnosis or treatment. So we're trying to
Give them
fix
my
that.
name.
Next time we come in,
The only
we'll
reason-
push that around.
The only
likewise.
reason I'm saying that
I've had
is
it 3
was one of
times
the
and I'm
first people-
highly allergic to doxycycline. Makes me so
I am
sick.
too.
So
I was one of the first people to get it back in the 80s, and they didn't
Yeah.
really know there were 4 or 5 women who got it, and we all had mono, an immune thing in college.
right.
And so when all of us got it, and Dr. Pearl had all of us, they were just doing research down at Yale. None of us got the bullseye. So back then, Lepre refused to treat us with doxycycline because none of us had the bullseye. We had all the symptoms, but because our immune systems reacted differently because we'd had a bad case of mono before, they sent our stuff down to Yale, and they turned back and said, treat them right now. So we were among the first Vanguard in 88, 87, 88 that got this, that did not have the traditional symptoms with the bullseye, but we had everything else going on top of chronic fatigue and mono. So they were
Right.
trying to figure out what the hell to do with us. So they did treat us, but I had a terrible reaction to doxy. But this is, and so then I got it again about 7 or 8 years ago. So this is, and it did show up normally. But it was just that there's so many aspects of this coming from those of us who were in the vanguard of this, that we don't know the long-term symptoms, return. I've got arthritis everywhere. So we don't know the
Exactly.
long-term from those of us who got it 30 some odd years ago. So give them my
Exactly.
name. I don't mind giving them all my blood.
Yeah, and I will participate in that also, since I've had it twice in a short period of time. And 21 is the first time, and then last year I had it again. So please do. It's interesting, having dogs now on the island. And I had a message back from Offshore Animal Hospital. The testing on dogs for tick-borne illness is much, much more accurate. I've got a prescription being picked up today that one of my dogs is going on 30 days of doxycycline because there's been some discrepancy of quick test and then the antibody test or whatever, but the test for dogs is much more accurate and much more thorough than what it is for humans. And I think, it's just how many ticks did you say are on the typical deer?
It can vary depending on the species. The slides from the presentation the other day showed what is called the nymph stage, or rather the larval stage of the Lone Star tick, which is approximately the size of a pinhead, and they live, or they mature in their initial stage in what looks like a little, like the caterpillar, the tent caterpillar kind of thing,
Yeah.
except that it's about 10 to 15,000 deer, so, or the ticks, nymph ticks. Some of, I think Telford's record for adults off of a deer was in the hundreds. And those are currently feeding on a single deer. And then for the nymph or larval stage, or the nymph stage, it can be in the thousands.
Thousands. And they're also, did they talk at all about the mice, the experiment or an update with that?
Yeah, the Lyme-resistant mice project,
Yes.
that's a different group. That's a group out of MIT, and I think they're finalizing the gene insert that they're gonna try for the mice. There's a couple of stability, like genetic stability over time things that they're working out, and then I think their anticipated plan is to in the next year or two come to start looking at a limited test release of some of these once they work out the ecological implications and get through their IRB process. I've worked with them on a couple of things. Dr. Telford is their kind of like the biologist, the wildlife biologist, the field biologist is probably a better term. And then it's Joanna and Buchthal. I'm not sure exactly. I'm terrible at pronouncing her last name. The one who is I think the centerpiece of that 60 Minutes story.
Yeah.
They're probably, like, I think they said they were a year or two out, but she keeps checking in, and she's, I think, a consultant on the current seroprevalence study that's ongoing, or the long-term Lyme study that's going around.
Yeah. So here, once again, Nantucket, is going to be on the forefront on hopefully some good solutions for the tick population. It's interesting. Ticks are becoming much more prevalent in Georgia, where it wasn't an issue, but now they're seeing more and more tick disease traveling south. So Nantucket, again, is things that are happening on our island are going to have a bigger effect, elsewhere. So
One thing that
no, that was,
you
yeah.
brought up about dogs and treatments of dogs. Cats don't seem to get Lyme disease. And they don't, do they, Jericho?
To my knowledge, no.
No. And so why aren't we studying the antibodies in cats, the saliva, blood, or whatever, to see what immune system defense they have, because cats get ticks on them. And then maybe we can get something out of it to help humans. I've wondered that for 25, 30 years. If cats don't get it, why aren't we studying cats' antibodies?
Interesting.
I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
Okay, something to ponder. All
Yeah.
right. I know that was a little bit of a digression, but thank you for sharing some of that background and information, Jericho, that you're obviously in Springfield right now, getting all sorts of
Yeah.
good information for us. So thank you.
Drinking from the fire hose.
Exactly, exactly. All right, so with no more on NIFRA, on the Interfaith Council, then we just have our last one, which is NAMI, which they're asking $60,000, and they applied for a capacity grant. And NAMI is on page 137 in my packet. And
I wonder if I could make this an ebook.
all right. So-
Yes.
138.
Yeah, 130,
Ah.
yep, 138 to 141. And it's interesting. One of my comments on this is historically, or at least since 2020, they have applied for, it was basically gap funding for therapists on the island, that a therapist could apply and get a maximum of $2,000 a month. I remember, just in reimbursement, that made up the difference between what the client was paying and what their actual fee was. And you know, it's not in this application. And my question is, has that program ended? And Jericho, do you have any information on that? Because, I just made an assumption that's what I was going to be reading, and this is completely different.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I spoke with Jackie about this. The gap, so the previous program was to make up the difference in insurance reimbursements and actual service delivery costs on Nantucket. That program will end at the end of this fiscal year. I
Okay.
don't think there's any way for NAMI to maintain it. NAMI was kind of the agency of last resort during the pandemic when this program was started up. It doesn't quite fit in with their core mission statement, and I think it was sort of intended to be a stopgap measure during the pandemic to ensure that there wasn't an interruption in services for people who are using independent therapists. It has been I personally think it has been an effective program, but I think that it requires tighter administration than NAMI really should be doing, given its traditional advocacy and outreach mission statement. And there are, to my knowledge, no plans to continue it under another agency. It gets very tricky because it is insurance reimbursement related, which means that there's a lot of complexity in the reporting and in the logging, and that it is difficult to integrate with other insurance-based approaches because it sort of sits outside of it. And then I think just that it was never really what what the core mission of NAMI and Jackie were looking for, because it isn't really what they do. And I don't think it was really, I think it was sort of overwhelming. It's basically the only thing that they were coming to fund, like only thing that they were doing on Nantucket to a large respect. And I think
Right.
that was long-term unsustainable for them.
Exactly, exactly. And it is, once again, I think that her applying for a capacity building grant is exactly what she's putting here. So since the last funding cycle, ASAP has been now incorporated with NAMI. So, and she talks about that in the grant. And ASAP has one employee, a part-time employee on the island that we do have a grant that was submitted, I think, in the substance misuse area for that. But she's also talking about hiring another person on Nantucket because it's NAMI of the Cape and Islands that Jackie is responsible for. NAMI is a fabulous nationwide program, but she's Cape and Islands, and by shoring up with someone else on the island, talking about 10-hour per week for an employee, and then she breaks down um, you know um, exactly what the grant is asking for, the fund activity of the $60,000. So um, I think that it's a good application of the capacity grant, and it's going to build more services on the island. So, but thank you for the explanation of funding, because we've funded it, and I know that it is an important thing. And they also, in the past, Dragonfly, they used to get half of that funding, and they've lost that because basically goes to just Fairwinds at this point. So I do know that they do rely on funding from the town to do these services. So any comments from anyone else on the NAMI application? Okay. I have not recently attended any of their programs, but they bring in good speakers, and like I said, it's a very strong nationwide organization, and to have them on the island, I think, is a positive thing. And by
They are
incorporating ASAP, it will help, I think, both organizations.
And I just want to say they are very active on the ground. Elise is generally on anything behavioral health related. She's often kind of connecting people together, and she's facilitated a couple of grant requests for other programs in the last couple of years. And then I believe Suzanne Franzuto, who is one of their part-time
Yes.
employees for a while, is now on the board. So they have some built-in Nantucket representation there, which is always
Yes, exactly. And that's I know we talked about that last week. Joanna had brought that up, and you see their board member that they do have. Suzanne is their Nantucket representative. So I would like Jackie or one of their representatives to come and speak to us, because first of all, it's a operational grant, and also because it is different than what they've applied for in the past couple of years. So would appreciate if she can come in. And of course, can be just by Zoom. She doesn't have to be here, and she can also appoint someone if she wants. But just to have a representation talk with us, that would be very helpful. All right. So that, I think, finishes all of the applications. So next week will be our interviews. So Lexi and Jericho, the agenda that I submitted for next week, I just basically said we would be doing interviews, but we will have people in time slots show up. So Lexi and Jericho, you've got that under control, and if we have any questions that specifically for organizations, they will get that in advance. And but basically, we're asking people to come in and they will have 10 minutes and some time for questions, and we'll move this along in 15 minutes for each organization. And the other thing that will happen when we're done with interviews is we will then all independently complete the rubric. And Lexi, if I can ask that we send out the documents just for the rubric scoring to everyone, that if maybe they get that before next Friday, because once the interviews are done, we're gonna ask all the committee members to independently score each application and to return them to Lexi. So our meeting is on Friday, so if you get them by Wednesday, which would be, what is it, the 21st or the 19th? By end of day, Lexi, then you will compile. So when we come on the 21st, we will have our own independent, but then you will provide for us the
Grid there, the spreadsheet type thing with everybody's.
yes, the spreadsheet with the collated, or I'm losing my words now. It's my tiredness is taking over. Collated or conglomerate, whatever the word is. I know it's a C word. That's all I can think of at the moment. And we want that all in advance. And if it'll come to you in a spreadsheet form. If you cannot fill it out and get it back electronically, I know that Lexi would be available, just if you put a call into her and you can give your scoring so she can then put it all together. So we get that. So when we show up on the 21st, we have that document and it becomes part of our deliberations.
And
So
I'll send
our
a
rubrics
PDF
aren't due until when exactly?
The
Nine-
19th, at end of business on the 19th, which is the
Okay.
Wednesday. Our meeting is on Friday morning, the 21st, so that'll
Okay.
give Lexi the day to just get it all compiled. Compile, that's the other word. The
And
other
you're
C
sooning
word.
us the rubric sheet, correct?
Yeah, I'll
Sooner
send
rather
a
than later.
spreadsheet in an Excel version as well as a PDF you could print out and write on.
When are we
Oh,
getting
great,
those?
thank you.
I could send it by Monday. I could send
Okay.
it by end of day today, but I'll see how my day goes. Monday
Yeah,
the
no.
latest.
Monday's fine.
Okay. All right,
19th.
okay. I'm just looking at the agenda. So next week is our interviews, so we're on to just the calendar, and then on the 21st, we will have our deliberation, and if we don't finish on the 21st, we have I think December 2nd or whatever, but hopefully we get it done on the 21st. Next week, our meeting will go from 9 to 12 just to fit in all the interviews. And, once again, when communicating with the grant applicants, we're requiring to come in, but just make sure people are invited. But if we have not specifically invited them, they have the opportunity to come in if they wish, but attending or not attending has no bearing on the outcome of deliberations for that group. All right. Any new business? I think we covered a bunch of things. And I assume just our needs assessment is moving along. Nothing more to really report at this point on that.
I did speak with Marcos earlier this week. He's the primary consultant for that. We are at I think we're at just over 100 responses, with I think about 20% of those being Spanish language. We're going to start the radio programming for it, and then we're going to start some physical outreach with printed QR codes at places. Do another round of those. We also have a bunch of provider surveys that are going to be sent back that are going in. Anyone who got the email requests for feedback in an interview, there's a couple of people. I think everybody in this group that was reached out to might have. Veronica, did you end up doing the zip? Okay, then
No, I haven't.
I'll ask for him to reach out to you again, and then we'll have the initial focus group and stakeholder research that he did while he was on island, and in the subsequent couple of weeks. That will be hopefully collated and presented to us ahead of deliberations. So we should have some data going into the deliberation process based on what data we've captured so far. This is more for the internal stuff because we want to hit our statistical frame of about 400 people with the right demographic breakdown before we can really use this as an authoritative needs assessment for outside grants. But the stakeholder sentiment, the focus group work, and then the benchmarking and other other municipality comparisons, we should more or less have that together, hopefully before the 21st rather.
Okay, and that will be in a report format or
Most likely it'll be a
preliminary report.
Yeah, and it will be a written document. I don't think it's too early for him to come and present to us ahead of this, and we wouldn't have as broad a data set as I would want to have when we're doing like overall priority setting towards like ahead of next year's grant cycle. But I do think that we'll have something that'll help us if we get kind of in a logjam where we have a tie between two programs. This will help us determine if there's a particular need that's higher than another.
Okay, very good, very good. All right, with no other new business, the last thing is just a motion to adjourn. Can I have a motion, please?
So move, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Second, someone?
I think I saw John Josh.
Okay, all righty. So thank you, everyone.
Roll call, roll
All
call.
right, yep, roll call, yep. All right, thank you. So Suzanne,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Linda,
Aye.
Lee,
All right,
and myself, yes, I. So
Have fun
with
in
that,
Australia.
Nap time, Veronica.
I'm going to take some a sleep aid and go to get some sleep because
take a long nap.
Yeah.
very, very long. Well,
Like
actually,
12 hours at least.
Yeah.
it's 1:45 in the morning, so I'm beyond my limit at this point. So I'm gonna get some hours of sleep, and then tomorrow morning everything will be bright and fresh. So thank
Did
you
you
for
take that
attending.
flight from Boston nonstop to Sydney?
No, we went down to Atlanta. We spent a couple of days with the grandkids in Atlanta, and then we left Wednesday afternoon from Atlanta to Dallas, and then Dallas to Brisbane. And
Jeez.
it's
All in one day?
Yes, yes. So it was 26 hours in transit. And it's a Qantas flight operated by American. First time we've done this one. And it was a
Wow.
beautiful new plane. It was a 787. It was comfortable as you can be for 17 hours on a plane. But and
Wow.
I know that if the recording can stop at this point, the American Airlines staff were the nastiest